My name's Caleb, and I'm an Uber driver up here in Anchorage, Alaska. The clock on my dashboard read 2:47 a.m., and the streets were dead, cloaked in that eerie quiet that only hits when the world's asleep. Snow flurries danced in my headlights, the kind that don't stick but make everything feel just a little more isolated. I was bone-tired, my eyes burning from 12 hours of driving, my thermos of coffee long gone cold. I just decided to call it quits when my phone pinged with a new ride request. One more, I thought. One more, then I'm done. The pickup was way out on Old Seward Highway, a stretch of road that's more wilderness than city. No streetlights, just endless pines and the occasional flicker of animal eyes in the dark. The app said the rider's name was EM. No profile picture, no rating, just those initials. Weird, but not unheard of. People up here don't always bother with the niceties. I figure it was some late-night shift worker, or maybe a drunk who'd wandered too far from a bar. Either way, the payout was decent, $1.42 for a 20-minute trip. Hard to say no to that when rent's due. The road was empty as I drove, my tires crunching softly on the thin layer of frost. My radio was off. I couldn't stand another pop song or late-night talk show, host yammering about nothing. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the occasional gust of wind rattling the car. The GPS marker was a pin dropped on a blank stretch of highway. No address, no landmark. That should have been my first red flag, but I was too tired to care. I slowed down as I neared the spot, scanning the roadside. Nothing but trees and darkness. Then I saw her. She stood just off the shoulder, half hidden in the shadows of a crooked spruce. A woman, maybe in her 30s, wearing a long, pale coat that looked too thin for the cold. Her hair was dark, hanging limp and wet like she'd been caught in a storm, though the snow was barely falling. She didn't wave or step forward, just stood there, staring straight ahead. My headlights caught her face for a second. Pale, almost gray, with eyes that didn't blink. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Alaskan night. I pulled over, my car idling as I rolled down a passenger window. "UEM?" I called out, trying to sound friendly despite the unease crawling up my spine. She didn't answer, just walked toward the car, her steps slow and deliberate, like she was gliding more than walking. The back door opened without me unlocking it, and she slid into the seat directly behind me. The door shut with a soft click, and the car felt heavier, like the air itself had thickened. "Where to?" I asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Her face was half hidden in shadow, but I could see her lips, thin, colorless, pressed into a tight line. She didn't speak, didn't even look at me, just stared out the window, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The GPS updated with a destination, an address I didn't recognize, somewhere deep in the outskirts of town. I shrugged it off and started driving, figuring she was just shy or maybe didn't speak English well. Happened sometimes. The silence in the car was suffocating. I'm used to quiet passengers, but this was different. It wasn't just that she wasn't talking. It was like she wasn't there, not really. No rustle of clothing, no soft breathing, no little movements you'd expect from a living person. I tried to fill the void. "Rough night, huh? This cold's no joke." Nothing. Not a nod, not a glance. Just that blank stare out the window, her reflection in the glass, unervingly still. A few minutes into the drive, the GPS started acting up. The screen flickered, the route line jerking wildly before settling on a new path. "Recalculating," the robotic voice said, but the new route didn't make sense. It was taking us off the highway, onto a narrow side road I'd never seen before. The street sign was rusted, barely legible, Cemetery Lane. My stomach twisted. Anchorage has a few cemeteries, but I'd never heard of this one, and I'd driven every back road in this city. You sure this is right?" I asked, glancing back at her. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine in the mirror, and I swear my heart stopped. They were black, not just dark but black, like twin voids sucking in the light. Her lips parted, and a voice came out, low, raspy, like wind through dead leaves. "Keep going," she said. 2 words, but they hit me like a punch. I wanted to argue, to turn around, but my hand stayed locked on the wheel, my foot on the gas. It was like I wasn't in control anymore. The road narrowed, the trees closing in until their branches scraped the sides of the car. The snow was falling harder now, piling up on the windshield faster than my wipers could clear it. The GPS screen went dark, then lit up again with static, the route line gone. I was driving blind, guided only by the road, and that voice in my head, keep going. The air in the car was freezing, my breath clouding despite the heater blasting. I could feel her behind me, not just sitting but looming, like her presence was pressing against my back. The road ended at a wrought iron gate, half open and sagging on its hinges. Beyond it, I could make out rows of headstones, their shapes blurred by the snow. A cemetery, old and forgotten, the kind you'd expect to find in a ghost story. The gate creaked as I eased the car through, my tires crunching over gravel and ice. "This is it?" I asked, my voice shaking. No answer. I turned to look at her, really look at her, and my blood ran cold. The back seat was empty. No woman, no coat, no nothing. Just an empty seat, the leather gleaming under the dim interior light. My heart pounded so hard I thought it'd burst. I checked the mirrors, the windows, even twisted around to look at the floorboards. She was gone, but the car still felt wrong, like she was still there, watching me. I fumbled for my phone, ready to call someone, anyone, but the screen was dead, the battery drained despite being fully charged an hour ago. Then I saw it. On the seat, right where she'd been, was a photograph. Old, yellowed, the edges curling like it had been handled 1,000 times. I reached for it with trembling hands, my mind screaming at me to get out, to run, but I couldn't stop myself. The photo showed a boy, maybe 8 years old, standing in front of a cemetery gate, the same gate I'd just driven through. He was smiling, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was strained, like he was scared but trying to hide it. Behind him, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure in a pale coat, her face blurred but unmistakable. The boy was me. I don't know how long I stared at that photo, my mind unraveling. I hadn't been to a cemetery as a kid. Not that I remembered. My childhood was a blur of foster homes and moving trucks, my parents gone before I was old enough to know them. But that was me, clear as day, standing in front of this place I'd never seen until tonight. The photo slipped from my fingers, fluttering to the floor, and that's when I heard it, a whisper, right behind my ear. "Stay," I screamed, throwing myself against the door, scrabbling for the handle. It wouldn't budge. The locks clicked shut, the engine revving on its own. The car lurched forward, deeper into the cemetery, the headlights cutting through the snow to reveal headstones leaning like crooked teeth. I pounded on the windows, shouting for help, but the sound was swallowed by the storm. The car stopped at the far end of the lot, near a mausoleum that looked like it hadn't been touched in a century. The door was ajar, a black rectangle that seemed to pull at the light. I didn't want to get out, but the car was freezing now, the heater dead, frost creeping up the windows. My breath came in shallow gasps, my fingers numb as I gripped the steering wheel. The whisper came again, louder this time, not from behind me, but from inside me, like it was burrowing into my skull. "Stay with me." I felt a tug, not physical, but deeper, like something was trying to pull my soul out of my body. I fought it, clenching my teeth, focusing on the pain of my nails digging into my palms. The photograph was still on the floor. I picked it up again, desperate for some clue, some way out. On the back, in faded ink, was a single word, Evelyn. The name hit me like a brick. I didn't know any Evelyn, but it felt familiar, like a half-remembered dream. The whisper came again, softer now, almost pleading. "You promised." I don't know what made me do it, fear, desperation, or something else, but I got out of the car. The snow was up to my shins, the wind cutting through my jacket like it wasn't there. The mausoleum loomed ahead, its stone walls etched with lichen and frost. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing into the darkness. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the smell of mold and something sweeter like rotting flowers. My phone's flashlight was useless, the beam flickering before dying completely. The room was small, dominated by a single stone sarcophagus in the center. On the lid was a name, Evelyn Morrow, 1892 to 1923. My breath caught. EM, the initials from the ride request. The sarcophagus was cracked, a jagged line running down its length, and from that crack came a faint glow, pale and sickly. I backed away, my boots scraping against the floor, but the door slammed shut behind me, the sound like a gunshot in the silence. The glow grew brighter, spilling out of the crack like liquid light. A hand reached out, pale and bony, the nails black and jagged. I screamed, stumbling back, but the room was too small, nowhere to run. The hand was followed by an arm, then a shoulder, then a head. Her head, the woman from the back seat. Her face was wrong, not just pale but decayed, the skin sagging, one eye clouded over, the other black and endless. Her lips curled into a smile, and I felt that tug again, stronger now, pulling me toward her. "You promised," she said, her voice echoing in my head, my chest, my bones. "You promised you'd stay." I didn't know what she meant, but flashes came to me, memories that weren't mine, or maybe they were. A boy, not me but somehow me, standing in this cemetery, holding a woman's hand. A promise whispered in the dark, a child's voice swearing to never leave. A fire, screams, the smell of smoke and blood. I clawed at my head, trying to push the images out, but they kept coming faster, sharper, until I couldn't tell where I ended and she began. Her other hand reached for me, and I felt my body go limp while slipping away. The cold was gone, replaced by a warmth that wasn't comforting, but suffocating, like being buried alive. Her fingers brushed my face, and I saw her life, Evelyn's life. A young woman in a small town, shunned for reasons I couldn't grasp, driven to this place by fear and hate. A child, her child, taken from her, buried somewhere in this cemetery. A promise made in desperation, a pact sealed in blood. "You're mine," she whispered, and I felt myself fading, my thoughts dissolving into hers. But something snapped in me, a spark of anger, of survival. I wasn't hers, not yet. I lunged for the sarcophagus, slamming my shoulder against it, the stone grinding as it shifted. The glow flickered, her scream tearing through the air, not just sound but pain, like knives in my skull. I pushed harder, the crack widening, and something fell out, a small, brittle bundle wrapped in cloth. I grabbed it, not thinking, just acting. It was light, too light, and I knew what it was before I unwrapped it. Bones, tiny and fragile, a child's bones. Evelyn's child. Her scream turned to a wail, the light dimming, her form wavering. I held the bundle tight, backing toward the door, my voice hoarse as I shouted, "I'm not yours." I never was. The door flew open, the wind howling in, and I ran, clutching the bones to my chest. The cemetery was a blur, the snow blinding, but I kept moving, my legs burning, my lungs screaming. The car was still there, the engine running, the headlights cutting through the storm. I threw myself inside, slamming the door, and peeled out, the tires spinning before catching. The whisper was gone, the tug gone, but I could still feel her, like a shadow in my mind. I drove for hours, not stopping, not looking back. The bones were on the passenger seat, wrapped in my jacket. I didn't know what to do with them, but I couldn't leave them there, not with her. Dawn was breaking when I finally pulled over, the sky a bruised purple over the mountains. My hand was shaking as I checked my phone. Somehow, it was working again. No ride history, no record of EM, nothing. But the photograph was still in my pocket, the boy's face, my face, staring back at me. I buried the bones that day, in a quiet spot by a river, far from any cemetery. I didn't pray or say anything. I just dug until my hands bled and covered them with earth. The photograph I burned. The flames curled to black, but I swear I saw her face in the smoke, just for a second. I haven't driven for Uber since. I barely leave my apartment. The nights are the worst, when the wind sounds like her voice, when the shadows move just a little too much. I don't know who Evelyn was. Not really. I don't know why she chose me, or what that promise meant. But I know she's still out there, waiting. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see that cemetery gate, and I feel her hand on my shoulder, whispering my name. This is the second story, and trust me, it's one that'll keep you up at night. We stopped renting out room 313 after a guest scratched a warning into the walls with their fingernails. My name's Ethan, and I was the new guy at the Grand Meridian Hotel, a fancy old place in downtown Seattle that reeked of money and secrets. It was my first week as a night shift receptionist, and I was already regretting the job. The pay was decent, but the hours were brutal. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., stuck behind a marble counter in a lobby that felt like a museum after dark. The chandeliers dimmed, the elevators hummed, and the air carried this faint, musty smell, like the building was breathing something ancient. My coworkers were nice enough, but they had this weird way of avoiding certain topics, like they were all in on a joke I wasn't allowed to hear. It was my third night when I first heard about room 313. I was wiping down the counter, trying to stay awake, when Marcus, the bellhop, leaned in close, his eyes glinting with mischief. "You know about the dare yet, rookie?" he asked. I shook my head, figuring it was some hazing ritual for newbies. He grinned, showing too many teeth. "Spend a night in 313. Nobody's lasted till morning." The other night staff, Lila, the concierge, and Javier, the security guy, went quiet, their faces tight. I laughed it off, thinking it was a ghost story to mess with me. "What? Is it haunted or something?" I asked, rolling my eyes. Marcus didn't laugh back. "Or something," he said, and walked away. Lila filled me in later, her voice low like she was afraid the walls were listening. Room 313 was on the third floor, tucked at the end of a hallway that always felt colder than the rest of the hotel. It used to be a regular suite, nothing special, until about 10 years ago when things started going wrong. Guests who stayed there complained of nightmares, voices in the walls, mirrors that showed things that weren't there. One guy, a businessman from Chicago, checked out after one night and never spoke again, literally. Doctors said it was trauma, but he wouldn't say what. The final straw was a woman in 2017. She stayed 3 nights, and on the last one, housekeeping found her curled up in the corner, her fingernails bloody, claw marks on the walls spelling out, "Get out or stay forever." They sealed the room after that, kept it off the books. Nobody cleaned it, nobody entered. But every now and then, late at night, the phone at the front desk would ring, caller ID showing room 313. Nobody answered those calls. I didn't believe a word of it. I'm not superstitious. Never have been. Ghosts, curses, all that stuff's just stories people tell to scare themselves. But Marcus wouldn't let it go. By my 5th night, he was on me every chance he got, calling me a coward, saying I'd never be one of them if I didn't prove myself. Lila and Javier tried to talk me out of it, but peer pressure's a hell of a thing, especially when you're 23 and try to fit in. So I agreed. One night in room 313, midnight to dawn. No big deal, right? I bring a book, some snacks, maybe catch a nap. Easy. Javier handed me the key, an old brass one, not like the key cards for the other rooms. It was heavy, cold, the number 313 etched into it like someone had carved it with a knife. "Don't do this, man," he said, his eyes dark. "It's not a game." I shrugged, playing it cool, but my stomach was in knots as I rode the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway was just as Lila described. Dim, the carpet faded, the air chilly enough to raise goosebumps. The other doors were normal, polished wood with gold numbers, but 313 was different. The paint was peeling, the number plate tarnished, and there was a faint hum coming from behind it, like a fluorescent light about to die. I turned the key, the lock clicking louder than it should have. The door swung open, and the smell hit me, damp like wet plaster, mixed with something sharp, almost metallic. The room was small, smaller than I expected for a luxury hotel. A single bed with a sagging mattress, a dresser with a cracked mirror, a nightstand with a rotary phone that looked like it belonged in a museum. The wallpaper was yellowed, curling at the edges, and the window was boarded up, though I could hear wind rattling the glass behind it. No TV, no minibar, just this emptiness. I stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind me, hard enough to make me jump. I laughed, trying to shake off the nerves. "Nice try, Marcus," I muttered, figuring he'd rigged something to mess with me. I set my backpack on the bed, pulled out my phone, and started a video for my YouTube channel. "What's up, guys? Ethan here, spending the night in the creepiest room at the Grand Meridian. Room 313, supposedly cursed. Let's see if I survive, right?" I panned the camera around, zooming in on the mirror, the phone, the claw marks on the wall. They were real, deep gouges in the plaster, the edges stained dark. I told myself it was just vandalism, but my voice shook a little as I narrated. The first hour was fine. I sat on the bed, scrolling through my phone, eating a granola bar. The signal was spotty, but I figure it was the old building. I tried to read, but the words kept slipping away, like my brain couldn't focus. The hum was louder now, steady, like it was coming from the walls. I checked the room for vents, outlets, anything that might explain it, but found nothing. The mirror kept catching my eye, the crack running diagonally across it, splitting my reflection. Every time I looked, it felt like my face was off, like it wasn't quite me. Around 1 a.m., I started feeling weird. Not sick, exactly, but heavy, like the air was pressing down on me. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, which was stained with watermarks that looked vaguely like faces if you squinted. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I was standing in front of the mirror, my hands pressed against the glass. I didn't remember getting up. My reflection stared back, but it was smiling, and I wasn't. I yanked my hands away, stumbling back, and my heart hammering. The mirror was cold, frost spreading from where my fingers had been. I grabbed my phone to check the time. 1:13 a.m. The battery was at 20%, even though I'd barely used it. I tried to call Marcus, but the call dropped before it rang. The hum was abuzz now, vibrating in my teeth, and I could hear something else, faint whisper like someone talking just out of earshot. I checked the door, still locked, but the key was gone. Not on the floor, not in my bag, just gone. I pounded on the door, shouting, but the sound didn't carry. It was like the room was swallowing it. The whispers grew louder, coming from the mirror. I avoided looking at it, but I could feel it pulling at me, like it wanted my attention. I turned on my flashlight, shining it at the walls, and saw the claw marks again. They were different. The words were still there. Get out or stay forever. But now there were more, scratched in smaller, shakier letters. He's watching. My breath caught. I hadn't seen that before. I would have noticed. I would have. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, trying to stay as far from the mirror as I could. The whispers were words now, fragmented but clear. I told myself it was my imagination, that I was just freaking out, but then its voice changed, and it was mine. My own voice, whispering my name, over and over. Ethan, Ethan, Ethan. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. It was inside my head, burrowing deeper with every second. I don't know how long I sat there, but when I checked my phone again, it was 2:13 a.m. The battery was dead. The screen lit up just long enough to show me the time before going black. The room was darker now, the single bulb overhead barely glowing, casting long and twitching shadows. The wind outside was screaming, the boards on the window bowing inward like something was pushing against them. I tried the door again, kicking it, throwing my weight against it. Nothing. I was trapped. Then the dream started. Not dreams, really visions, bleeding into the room. I was still awake, but I saw things. A man in a suit, his face blurred, standing by the bed, his hands dripping black. A woman with no eyes, her mouth moving soundlessly, pointing at the mirror. A child sitting on the dresser, swinging its legs, humming that same damn tune I'd heard in the home. They weren't solid, just shapes in the corner of my eye, but they felt real, like they were waiting for me to acknowledge them. The mirror was the worst. Every time I glanced at it, I saw something different. My reflection, but with blood on my face. The room behind me, but empty. The bed made like I'd never been there. And once, just once, the woman with no eyes, standing right behind me, her hands on my shoulders. I screamed, spinning around, but there was nothing there. Just the room, the bed, the mirror. The mirror that was humming now, the glass vibrating, the crack glowing faintly, like something was trying to push through. I don't know how I made it to 3 a.m. Time wasn't right anymore. Minutes stretched, seconds crawled, then snapped forward like a rubber band. I was pacing, muttering to myself, trying to stay sane, when the phone rang. That old rotary phone, shrill and piercing, cutting through the whispers. I stared at it, my heart in my throat. Nobody knew I was here. The room wasn't on the system. The phone wasn't even plugged in. I checked. But it kept ringing, louder, faster, until I couldn't stand it. I picked it up, my hand shaking so bad I almost dropped it. Hello. I croaked. Ethan, get out. A voice screamed. My voice, panic sobbing. It's not a room, it's a trap. She's coming, The line went dead, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. I slammed the phone down, my chest heaving, my vision blurring with tears. The clock on my phone, somehow working again, just for a second, read 3:13 a.m. The mirror cracked louder, a new fracture splitting the glass. The hum was a scream now, the whispers a chorus, and I could feel her, whatever she was, closer, not just in the room but inside me, clawing at my thoughts. I saw her in the mirror, not behind me, but in me, my reflection twisting, my eyes going black, my mouth stretching into that eyeless woman's smile. I grabbed the phone, smashing against the mirror, the glass shattering, the plastic cracking, but it didn't stop. The hum was louder, the whispers clearer, and the shadows were moving, not just in the corners but toward me. I don't remember much after that. Flashes mostly. Me on the floor, clawing at the carpet, my nails splitting. The door shaking, like something was trying to get in or out. The child's voice, singing now, soft and sweet and wrong. And her, always her, in every shadow, every reflection, her hands reaching, her voice promising I'd stay forever. I fought, I think. I screamed. I begged. I prayed, though I'd never believed in anything before. But it wasn't enough. I woke up in the lobby, sprawled on the marble floor, the morning sun streaming through the windows. Marcus was there, Lila, Javier, all staring at me like I'd crawled out of a grave. My clothes were torn, my hands bloody, my phone shattered in my pocket. They said they'd found me at 6 a.m., the door to 313 wide open, the room empty. No mirror, no phone, no claw marks, just a bare room, like it had been scrubbed clean. They didn't ask what happened. I didn't tell them. I quit that day, walked out, and never went back. But it's not over. I can't sleep. Not really. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that room. The hum of my ears, her hands on me. Mirrors are the worst. I covered every one in my apartment, but sometimes I hear it, glass creaking, like it's about to crack. And at 3:13 a.m., every night, my phone rings. It's dead, the screen black, but it rings, and I hear my voice, begging, screaming, Ethan, get out. I don't know what room 313 is. A curse, a trap, a doorway to something worse. I don't know why it let me go, or why it's still calling me back. But I know one thing. If you're ever at the Grand Meridian, and someone dares you to stay in 313, run. Smash every mirror you see. Now, coming to our nest story. And trust me, it's one that'll make you check your walls before you sleep. My daughter told me the eyes in the walls didn't blink unless they were angry. My name's Sarah, and I'm a single mom to my 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Last spring, we moved into an old colonial house in Concord, Massachusetts, a fixer-upper we got for cheap because it had been empty for years. The realtor called it a steal, with its creaky oak floors, high ceilings, and sprawling backyard. I saw it as a fresh start after a messy divorce, a place for Lily and me to rebuild. Sure, the paint was peeling, the windows rattled, and the air had a faint, sour smell, but I figured we'd make it ours. I didn't know then that the house wasn't empty. Not really. The first week was hectic, unpacking boxes, scrubbing decades of grime, and trying to keep Lily entertained. She's a quiet kid, always drawing or talking to her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Flops. But she seemed off from the start. She'd stare at the walls, her little brows furrowed, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. I chalked it up to the move. New place, new routine, bound to shake her up. Then, one night at dinner, she said it, her voice small but clear. Mommy, the eyes in the walls watch me when I sleep. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. What eyes, sweetie? I asked, keeping my tone light. She shrugged, poking at her peas. The ones in my room. They don't blink unless they're mad. Kids say weird things, right? I told myself it was her imagination, maybe a shadow or a crack in the plaster she turned into a story. But her words stuck with me, gnawing at the back of my mind. The next day, I checked her room while she was at school. It was just a bedroom, faded wallpaper with a floral pattern, a slanted ceiling, a single window overlooking the yard. No eyes, no faces, nothing but dust and cobwebs. I laughed it off, feeling silly, but I couldn't shake the chill that settled in my chest. A few days later, Lily showed me her drawings. She'd always drawn happy things, flowers, rainbows, me, and her holding hands. But these are different. Crayon sketches of tall, Thin figures, their faces blank except for huge, staring eyes. They stood in corners, peered from doorways, pressed against walls. "Who are they?" I asked, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. "The Watchers," she said like it was obvious. "They live in the walls and look at me." Her matter-of-fact tone made it worse, like she was describing the weather. I hugged her, told her they were just dreams, but my hand was shaking. I started noticing things after that. Little things, easy to dismiss at first. The house was old, so creaks and groans were normal, but these were rhythmic like fingernails tapping behind the walls. At night, when Lily was asleep, I'd hear it, soft, deliberate scratches, always from her room or the hallway. I'd check, flashlight in hand, but find nothing. No mice, no loose pipes, just silence that felt heavier than it should. The air in the house changed, too. That sour smell grew sharper, like something rotting just out of sight. Then I found the peepholes. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Lily was napping. I was stripping wallpaper in the upstairs hall, trying to make the place feel less like a ghost and more like a home. As I peeled back a strip, I saw it, a tiny hole, no bigger than a dime, drilled through the plaster. I thought it was a rat at first, but the edges were too clean, too precise, like someone had used a tool. I pressed my eye to it, expecting to see the other side of the wall, but it was dark, unnaturally dark, like the light was being swallowed. My breath caught when I thought I saw something move, a flicker, quick and fluid, like an eye pulling back. I found more holes after that. One in Lily's room, behind her headboard. Another in the living room, hidden by a painting the previous owners left behind. A cluster in the basement, near the old coal chute. Each one was the same, small, deliberate, leading to that same inky darkness. I told myself it was the house's age, maybe old plumbing or wiring, but my skin crawled every time I passed a wall. I started checking Lily's room at night, running my hands over the plaster, searching for new holes. She'd wake up sometimes, clutching Mr. Flops, and whisper, "They're looking, Mommy. They're mad." I called a contractor, figuring I needed a professional to check for pests or structural issues. He came the next day, a gruff guy named Tom who'd worked on old houses for decades. He poked around, tapped the walls, and frowned. "No signs of rats," he said. "These holes, they're not natural. Someone made them, and not recently. Looks like they've been here a while." He shone a flashlight into one, then pulled back, his face pale. "What's wrong?" I asked. He shook his head, muttering something about bad vibes, and left without charging me. That night, the scratching was louder, faster, like it was angry. I bought spackle and sealed the holes, my hands trembling as I smoothed the paste over each one. It felt like a violation, knowing something had been watching us, maybe for years. I didn't tell Lily. She was scared enough, but I moved her mattress to the living room, saying we were having a sleepover. She seemed relieved, but her drawings got worse. The Watchers were closer now, their eyes bigger, their blank faces smeared with red crayon, like blood. She stopped talking about them, just drew, her little hands moving faster than I'd ever seen. The first night after sealing the holes, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums. Around 2 a.m., I heard it, a soft, wet sound like breathing. Not from Lily, who was curled up beside me, but from the wall behind the couch. I held my breath, listening, and there was again, slow and deliberate in and out. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and scanned the wall. The spackle was intact, but the plaster around it looked soft, like it was bulging slightly. I touched it, and it was warm, pulsing faintly under my fingers. I yanked my hand back, my heart pounding. The breathing stopped, replaced by a low, guttural hum, like a voice trying to form words. I scooped up Lily, still asleep, and ran to my bedroom, locking the door. The hum followed, louder now, vibrating through the floorboards. I sat on the bed, clutching Lily, whispering to myself that it was just the house settling, just my imagination. But then the scratching started again, not from one spot, but everywhere, behind every wall, under the floor, above the ceiling. It was frantic, like a swarm of claws tearing at the house from the inside. Lily woke up, her eyes wide. "They're mad, Mommy," she whispered. "They don't like the holes being closed." I shushed her, stroking her hair, but my voice cracked. The scratching grew louder, the hum turning into a chorus of whispers, too many to count, overlapping in a language I didn't understand. The air was thick, the sour smell choking now, like decay, seeping through the walls. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but the screen was dead, the battery drained despite being fully charged hours ago. Then the wall cracked. It was the one behind the bed, a jagged split running from floor to ceiling, like something had punched through from the other side. Dust poured out, and with it came that breathing again, louder, closer, wetter. I screamed, pulling Lily to the floor, shielding her as the crack widened. Something moved in the gap, a long, pale shape, too thin to be human, its surface slick and glistening. It didn't have a face, just a cluster of dark, unblinking eyes that locked onto mine. More shapes pressed against the crack, their eyes gleaming, their whispers rising to a shriek. I don't know how I moved, but I grabbed Lily and ran, the door flying open as if something wanted us to flee or chase us. The hallway was wrong, the walls bulging, more cracks splitting the plaster, eyes peering from every fracture. The whispers were screams now. My name, Lily's name, woven into a cacophony of rage. I stumbled down the stairs, Lily clinging to me, her sobs muffled against my chest. The front door was locked, the knob burning hot, but I kicked it until it splintered, the night air hitting us like a slap. We ran to the car, my hand shaking as I fumbled with the keys. The house loomed behind us, its windows dark, but I swore I saw movement, shapes slithering behind the glass, eyes pressed against the panes. I drove to a motel, not stopping until we were miles away. Lily didn't speak, just clutched Mr. Flops, her face blank. I checked us in, paid in cash, and sat on the bed, watching her sleep, afraid to close my eyes. The next day, I called the police, saying we'd had a break-in. They checked the house, but found nothing. No cracks, no holes, no signs of damage. The spackle was gone, the walls smooth, like they'd never been touched. They suggested I'd imagined it, maybe stress from a move. I didn't argue. I knew they wouldn't believe me. I sold the house at a loss, never going back, not even a pack. A neighbor mailed us our things, but Lily's drawings were missing. I was glad. We live in an apartment now, a modern place with thin walls and noisy neighbors. It's safe, I tell myself, but Lily doesn't draw anymore. She barely speaks, and when she does, it's about the watchers. They're still there. She'll whisper, staring at the wall. They followed us. I check the walls every night, running my fingers over the drywall, searching for holes. I haven't found any, but sometimes when the apartment is quiet, I hear it, a faint scratch, a soft breath just behind the plaster. I don't sleep much. The sour smell lingers, faint but always there, like it's in my skin. At night, I lie awake, listening, waiting for the whispers to start again. And sometimes, just before dawn, I feel it. Eyes on me, unblinking, angry, waiting for me to look back. This is the last story. And if you're watching this video, then this chilling tale is a gift for you. Trust me, it's one that'll linger long after the screen goes dark. They said if you cried during her funeral, she'd come back to finish her story with you. My name's Lucas, and I'm a junior at Emerson College in Boston. Last fall, I attended a funeral for a classmate I barely knew, a girl named Clara Voss. She was in my creative writing class, quiet, always scribbling in a leather-bound diary she carried everywhere. She kept to herself, her dark hair falling over her face like a curtain, but her stories were haunting, full of shadowy figures and whispered secrets. 2 weeks before midterms, she was found dead in her dorm room. The police called it an overdose, but rumors swirled. Suicide, maybe, or something darker. I didn't know her well, just enough to nod in passing, but I went to her funeral out of respect. I wish I hadn't. The service was held in a small, gray stone chapel on the edge of town, the kind of place that felt older than the city itself. It was a chilly October afternoon, the sky heavy with clouds, the air sharp with the smell of wet leaves. I arrived late, slipping into a pew at the back, my sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. The chapel was packed, but it was wrong. The mourners weren't sobbing or dabbing their eyes. They were smiling, small, tight smiles, like they were sharing a secret. Clara's parents stood at the front, their faces blank, their hands clasped so tightly their knuckles were white. A closed casket draped in white roses sat before the altar, and above it hung a portrait of Clara, her eyes too large, too knowing, and staring straight at me. The minister, a gaunt man with a voice like rust, spoke in riddles. "Clara's story is unfinished," he said, his eyes sweeping the crowd. "She seeks a teller to carry it forward. Do not weep, lest you be chosen." I shifted in my seat, uneasy. I never heard a funeral like this. No prayers, no hymns, just that cryptic warning repeated like a mantra. The mourners nodded, their smiles widening, and I noticed something else. They weren't looking at the casket or the minister. They were watching each other, their eyes darting, like they were waiting for something to happen. I tried to focus, to pay my respects, but the air in the chapel was thick, pressing against my chest. Clara's portrait seemed to shift, her lips curling slightly, though I told myself it was the flickering candlelight. The minister droned on, his words blending into a low hum, and I felt a prickling at the back of my neck like someone was staring. I glanced around, but nobody was looking at me. Just those eerie smiles, those watchful eyes. My throat tightened, I don't know why, but a tear slipped down my cheek. I wiped it away quickly, embarrassed, but the room changed. The hum stopped. The mourners turned, their smiles frozen, their eyes locking onto me. The minister paused, his head tilting, and Clara's parents stepped forward, their faces no longer blank, but hungry. "You've chosen," the minister said, his voice soft but final. I wanted to laugh, to tell them it was just a tear, just a reflex, but my voice stuck. The air grew colder, the candles guttering, and Clara's portrait. Her eyes were different now, black and endless, boring into mine. The mourners began to hum, a low, discordant sound that vibrated in my bones, and I stumbled out of the pew, muttering apologies, fleeing to the parking lot. I drove back to campus, my hand shaking on the wheel, telling myself it was just a weird ceremony, just grief twisted into something strange. But that night, things started happening. I was in my dorm, trying to study, when I noticed my reflection in the desk mirror. It was me, but off. My eyes were too dark, my skin too pale, and for a second, I saw her, Clara, standing behind me, her head tilted, her diary clutched to her chest. I spun around, heart pounding, but the room was empty. The mirror was normal again, just my face sweaty and scared. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice, soft, insistent, whispering my name. "Lucas, finish my story." I told myself it was stress, maybe guilt for not knowing her better, but the next morning, I found something in my backpack. A leather-bound diary, worn and heavy, with Clara Voss embossed on the cover. I hadn't taken it, hadn't seen it at the funeral, but there it was, its pages filled with her spidery handwriting. Stories of a girl trapped in a house with no doors, watched by shadows that whispered her secrets. The last page was blank except for 2 words, "You're next." I threw the diary across the room, my breath ragged. I wanted to burn it, to throw in the trash, but something stopped me, a pull like the book was part of me now. I hid it under my mattress, hoping it'd disappear, but it didn't. That night, the whispers were louder, not just in my head but in the room, coming from the walls, the ceiling, the mirror. "Tell my story, Lucas. Don't stop." I covered the mirror with a towel, unplugged my lamp, and sat in the dark, my knees pulled to my chest, trying to block her out. By the 3rd day, I was a wreck. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten much, and my roommate, Jake, started asking if I was okay. I couldn't tell him the truth. He'd think I was losing it. So I said I was just stressed about midterms. But Clara was everywhere. In every mirror, every window, her face flickering over mine. In class, I'd hear her whisper, her voice weaving through the professor's lecture. At night, the diary would be on my desk, open to a new page, even though I'd locked it in a drawer. Her stories were changing, the girl in the house becoming me, the shadows calling my name. I went to the campus counselor, thinking maybe I was having a breakdown. She listened, her face kind but skeptical, and suggested I take a break, maybe talk to a priest if I believed in that stuff. I didn't, but I was desperate, so I tracked down the minister from the funeral. He lived in a rundown house near the chapel, its windows boarded up, its yard choked with weeds. He opened the door just a crack, his eyes bloodshot, his hands trembling. "You cried," he said before I could speak. "You're hers now." He told me about the mourner's game, a ritual older than the chapel, older than the town. Clara wasn't just a girl. She was a vessel, chosen by something ancient, something that fed on stories. Her death wasn't an accident. It was a sacrifice, her life traded to keep the entity at bay. But her story wasn't finished, and the ritual passed it to someone new. The rule was simple: don't cry at the funeral, or you'd be the next teller. The mourners, those smiling faces, were past tellers, bound to her forever, their lives drained to keep her story alive. "You can't stop it," he said, his voice breaking. "You tell her story, or it takes you." I left his house numb, the diary burning a hole in my bag. I tried to ignore it, to go back to normal, but Clara wouldn't let me. Her whispers were screams now, her face in every reflective surface, my phone, my laptop, even a spoon. She was closer each time, her hands reaching, her eyes black voids that pulled at my soul. The diary's pages filled on their own, my handwriting mixing with hers, stories of me running through a house with no doors, shadows clawing at my heels. Hey, if you're finding this story as chilling as I did living it, do me a favor, subscribe to my channel and hit that like button. It means the world, and it keeps these stories coming. Now, let's get back to the nightmare. One night, I woke up standing in my dorm, the diary open in my hands, my fingers smudged with ink. I'd written a new story, one where I was trapped in the chapel, the mourners circling, their smiles splitting their faces to reveal teeth like needles. Clara's voice was in my head, louder than ever. "Finish it, Lucas. Finish me." I screamed, throwing the diary, but it landed open, the pages fluttering like they were alive. Jake wasn't there. He'd started crashing at his girlfriend's, saying our room gave him the creeps, and I was alone with her. I tried to fight it. I stopped looking at mirrors, covered every reflective surface, but she found other ways. My dreams were hers, vivid and suffocating, the house with no doors closing in, the shadows whispering my fears. I'd wake up with scratches on my arms, words carved into my desk. Tell it. The diary was always there, heavier each day, its pages multiplying, stories piling up. My childhood secrets, my regrets, my darkest thoughts, all woven into Clara's narrative. I went to the library, digging through old records, trying to find anything about the chapel or the ritual. I found a newspaper clipping from 1893, yellowed and brittle, about a girl named Eliza Voss, Clara's ancestor, maybe, who died in a fire at the chapel. The article said she was a storyteller, shunned for her tales of spirits and shadows. The townsfolk called her a witch, and when she burned, they smiled, just like the mourners at Clara's funeral. There were other stories too. Every few decades, another girl, another death, another unfinished story passed on. I was running out of time. My grades tanked, my friends stopped calling, and I could barely function. Clara's voice was constant, her presence a weight on my chest. The diary was writing itself faster, the stories darker, ending with me dead, drowned, burned, torn apart by shadows. I knew what she wanted, for me to finish her story, to give an ending, but every ending meant my death. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't. I decided to destroy the diary. I drove to a quarry outside town, the book on the passenger seat, its leather pulsing like a heartbeat. I doused it with gasoline, lit a match, and watched it burn. The flames were wrong, green and cold, the smoke forming shapes that looked like Clara's face, her mouth open in a silent scream. Her voice roared in my head, not words but pain, tearing at my mind. I collapsed, my vision blackening, and when I came to, the diary was there, unburned, its pages pristine. "You can't stop," it said on the last page, in my handwriting. I don't know how I got back to my dorm, but things got worse after that. Clara wasn't just in mirrors now. She was in me. I catch myself speaking her words, my hands writing her stories without my control. My reflection wasn't mine anymore. It was hers, her black eyes, her pale skin, her smile that wasn't a smile. The mourners started appearing, too, not in the chapel but in my life. I'd see them on the street, in the library, their their smiles following me, their eyes empty. They'd whisper, "Tell it, Lucas," their voices blending with hers. I tried to run. I packed a bag, bought a bus ticket to anywhere, but at the station, the diary was in my hand, though I'd left it behind. The mourners were there, lining the platform, their smiles splitting wider, their teeth glinting. Clara's voice was a scream. "You're mine." I dropped the ticket, stumbled back to campus, and locked myself in my room. The shadows were alive now, slithering across the walls, their eyes glowing, their whispers a chorus of "finish it." I don't know how much time I have left. The diary's almost full, the story's all ending the same. Me, dead, my body a vessel for her. I'm writing this, recording it, hoping someone will hear, someone will know. I can't destroy the diary, can't stop her, but maybe I can warn you. If you're ever at a funeral and the mourners smile, don't cry. Don't look at the mirrors. Don't listen to the whispers. And if you find a diary that isn't yours, run. Claire's here now. I feel her in my chest, her hands on my heart, and her voice in my throat. The mirror's uncovered, and she's smiling, her eyes black, her diary open on my lap. I'm finishing her story, I think. I don't want to, but my hands are moving, the words spilling out. I see the chapel, the mourners, their teeth, their eyes. I see the house with no doors, the shadows waiting. I see Clara, and she's me, and I'm her, and the story's done. Don't cry for me. Thank you for watching this spine-chilling tale, and for joining me on this journey into the unknown. If this story left you looking over your shoulder, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. It keeps these nightmares alive. Stay safe, keep your mirrors covered, and I'll see you in the next video, if you dare.